Okay. I've never started a webinar with so many people punctual, on time. I don't know what that means about all of you people out there, but look at us, 11:01, and we got a bunch of people on already.
Yeah.
Let's give it one more minute and let others trickle in, and then we'll start with, we'll get this party started. Sound good? Okay. 11:02 sounds like a good place to start. We'll start out slow here. Just first of all, thank you all for attending. We're going to try to keep this as interactive and fun as possible because how many webinars can a person attend in the year 2020? I don't know. This webinar will be recorded. So if you have to walk away or if you want to look at it later, we will send it to you in a follow-up email. That email is also going to include a lot of different resources for you to understand this topic, jobs to be done. If you have questions, go ahead and use the chat feature, or even if you don't have questions, if you just want to say something, use the chat feature. We'll be paying attention to that, and we'd love to respond and again make this as interactive as we can within this platform. Mike, anything I'm forgetting here as far as housekeeping?
No, perfect.
Awesome.
Good.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody to Bye Bye Personas. We're going to give you another way to understand your members' needs, and that way is the Jobs to be Done framework. My name is Tracy Betts. I own Boulder Strategic Consulting. So we help associations drive revenue by aligning your strategy with customer needs and tying that to the technical systems that serve them. And Mike, I'll let you introduce yourself.
Great. Hi, I'm Mike Feinstein. I'm with Engage Strategies, and we're an innovation and strategy firm. And I am really excited to be here today just because I love, using some simple frameworks to make sense of chaos and complexity. Jobs to be Done is a great tool to do that, and I think it's needed now more than ever during the challenges that we're in with COVID. So this has been a breakthrough with me. Looking forward to working with you over the next hour.
I'm looking forward to figuring out how to change the screen, actually. So this webinar is what we've decided. This is going to be a two-part series. I'm just warning you now. The follow-up webinar is going to dive deeper into tying your member needs directly into your day-to-day work, right? Into your processes, into your systems. Today, we're introducing you to the first part of that. And the first part of that is a framework called Jobs to be Done. So in the course of this hour, we're going to demonstrate how Jobs to be Done is used and outcomes you can expect if you do use it. When you walk away from us today, here's what we're hoping you take away, okay? We're hoping you understand how important a shift in your mind as far as rather than focusing on members and benefits, but focusing on the job people need to be filled, okay? We're going to talk a little bit about how to get your staff and board on the same page regarding the prioritization of your innovation efforts. The bulk of this is really helping you understand how Jobs to be Done uncovers important member insights that you are not going to get through a survey and you're not going to be able to use personas for. And then we're going to talk about how one association applied Jobs to be Done to their digital transformation efforts, to give you an example. So let's start off a little bit about the challenge with understanding member needs, because this is what I've seen. And Mike, I'm sure you've seen this in the course of your work. We have a lot of clients, they'll do a member survey, and that survey tells them exactly, the answer, the question the survey is answering is, why do members join our association? Okay, so you feel pretty well armed, right? You have this set of data that says this is why people join our association. And you pair that with personas, right? So you know who your members are and you know why they join. So if that works so well, why do we hear so many association execs say, hey, we're giving them what they want. You know, they say they want to be here for X. We have all of these benefits. How come nobody's using these benefits? So, you know, you keep adding benefits and improving the benefits and the functionality in your offerings, and you're still not increasing user adoption and engagement. So I think it shows us all there's a limitation, right? There's a limitation to the traditional survey. There's a limitation to personas. There's even a limitation to the data, right? Jobs to be done kind of hits the nail on the head when it comes to why members need you in a different way. And as a result, it's going to take the guesswork out of innovation. Okay, and innovation can be any change that you make to better serve your members. So for all of our talk about innovation, for most organizations, that type of change is painfully hit or miss, right? Innovation starts with an idea generally and not a need. You know, let's take, let me give you an example. A lot of associations have a traditional print publication. And, you know, perhaps you've done a survey or you've interviewed members and they're not reading your magazine, right? So the question you're going to do, here's what you're going to do. You're going to brainstorm solutions to what your problem is. And it may start with a question, right? How might we better engage members with the magazine? And when you do that, you're going to come up with a lot of different ways to solve the problem, right? You're going to say, let's make the print publication bigger and glossier, or let's do away with the print publication and create an online version only. And 9 times out of 10, somebody is in love with a flip book, you know, and they're like, let's do away with everything but a flip book. You know, and then you choose a solution and you kind of pray, right? It's like a process of crossing my fingers and is this the thing that members really want? Because they've told us they wanted something like this before, but then they still didn't use it. There's a lot of hope. There's a lot of ambiguity around making sure you're fixing the problem correctly. So that's the first challenge with identifying member needs and innovating off of them. Second one, when it comes to innovation, sometimes people have ideas they're passionate about. And, you know, let's take that flip book. You love the sexy flip book. You really want to use it. So what you do is you look for evidence to support why you should build that offering, right? So that's called confirmation bias. And confirmation bias plays a role in sometimes how our innovation efforts go awry. So it brings us back to, this brings us all back to, you know, how do we keep the member need and really understand the member need in the first place? And this is what Jobs to be Done is going to help us with. I'm taking a long time on this slide, Mike, but I want to tell this story because I love this story.
I wonder what story.
The status fries. Do you remember this story? So I think this is hilarious, first of all. So I don't know, anybody in chat, can you tell me if you've heard of status fries? It was from Burger King, 2000s. Probably not. I can't see chat, so you'll have to tell me. All right, well, I'm going to tell you what status fries are. So status fries are healthy French fries. So in 2013, when Chipotle went on the scene and Panera came on the scene, Burger King was watching their customers, like their market share was being drained to these healthier options. And so status fries was supposed to be this hamburger that made hamburger fans feel better about their fast food purchase. Okay, so it was based on this premise that even if I'm going to get a hamburger, I maybe want it to be healthy, right? So they were made with this special batter, or I'm sorry, not a hamburger, French fries, because they were made with this special batter that had, it absorbed less oil. So those French fries were 20%, they had 20% fewer calories than regular French fries. So Burger King launched this product. It was supposed to be a huge deal. They put a ton of money into it and it failed within a year. And there was a Wall Street Journal report, and that report said Burger King failed with Satisfries because it did a bad job convincing the public that they were the healthier choice. I read that and I was like, well, I think that's ridiculous, because if Burger King actually used the jobs to be done framework and really understood the job that those fries are serving, are fulfilling with their members, then they wouldn't have to convince the public of anything, right? Because if you're fulfilling a need, you don't have to convince your members that your benefit or whatever you're creating is great for them. They will want it because it's fulfilling their need. So jobs to be done gives you that framework, right? To start digging into what the real need is. And it would have saved Burger King a lot of money. I'm just saying, a lot of money. Let's move into a survey. I just want to see here. What are you doing now to understand member needs? Okay, so how is it that you as an association are understanding your members? So click surveys, is it a task analysis, interviews, dialogue, listening? If your method or methodologies for understanding members are not here, please put them in the chat. Let us know. We'll give you a second. All right, Michaela, whenever you feel like it slows down a little bit, let's see what they have to say. Crickets. We see no response. There we go. Okay, so about half of you, 44%, are using surveys, interviews, informal dialogue, 31%, and then online listening. That sounds about right, don't you think, Mike?
Yeah.
All right.
No surprises there.
Yeah, yeah.
And Hillary added personas in the chat.
Yeah, isn't that funny, Hillary? We were talking about personas and we didn't add those to that. Ridiculous. Mark uses a combination of communications. Fair enough. Mike, you want to dive into jobs to be done?
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So we're here to talk about jobs to be done. And then Tracy, I love that you brought up the French fry example, because we'll continue this journey talking about fast food, looking at another example. But I'm curious, can you all let me know in the chat, how many of you are familiar with jobs to be done or used it? If anyone has any familiarity with it or used it, just let us know in the chat. It'd be interesting to see. What you see here is, I think, one of the better articles from Harvard Business Review in 2016. If you want to learn about it, we'll send you that resource after today. But let's talk about what jobs is. And it is quite a powerful tool to take, as we said, the guessing game out of innovation. Often people in organizations have a great idea they're excited about. They get other people excited about, and they go launch it, and they don't always hit the need on the button. So jobs is jobs to be done gives you some information about member needs that you cannot get from a survey. The term was popularized by Clayton Christensen from Harvard Business School. He's the gentleman that came up with the term disruptive innovation, has written a lot about it. And one of his well-known books on this is called Competing Against Luck, which is a good read as well. There are some other theories about jobs to be done. We're talking about his methodology now, but in our follow-up, we're going to talk about another framework called ODI, which gets at some measurable outcomes and gets even more granular. So let's dig in now and talk about what a job is. And Tracy, you can go to the next slide. So when we talk about a job to be done, or a job in short, this is what it is. It's what an individual seeks to accomplish in a given circumstance. So jobs to be done is based on the premise that people don't buy products, but instead they hire products to do a job for them, right? So something comes up in your life or someone else's life and they're thinking, this is a problem or a challenge I'm having. What could I hire and pull into my life to resolve this, right? An economist once said, people don't want a 1/4-inch drill. They want a 1/4-inch hole, right? So the term job or jobs to be done is really just, it's an abstraction. It's a way to visualize causation and what causes someone to do something. So, and we're going to use language hire and fire around a job too to help visualize the process. And if we can go to the next slide. So here's the idea is that we go through our life pulling things into our life to get a job done. So if you were to watch me working for a few days at home, you'd see a few things. Sometimes I'm spread out working at the kitchen table where there's a lot of nice light, but my kids are Zooming upstairs in their school and they come down for lunch and it gets kind of loud, right? So then I move to the office upstairs where I am right now, right? That's one job. Sometimes I set up a folding table in the basement. So that job is quiet space to focus and take calls, okay? But sometimes I walk to Starbucks and that's a totally different job. If it's nice outside, I like to sit out in front of Starbucks and do some work. And that job is a totally different job, as I said. That job is give me the energy and inspiration of people around me, right? So jobs theory provides a very different construct for innovating. And there's an art to figuring out what the job is, and we're gonna practice that a bit. In short, you don't want to make sure that a job should not be able to be filled by the same kind of products. If you get that, you don't have a job, right? For example, getting energy and inspiration from sitting in an environment, I can go to a lot of different places to do that. So that's a good example. A job would not be, I need to go to a coffee shop that has power outlets and big windows. If I focus on that as the job, it's not going to give me some new ideas. So I want to share one of Clayton Christensen's famous stories. We can go to the next slide. Some of you may have heard this. It's the milkshake story. And then we're going to dig into a little bit about how this works and look at an actual example from an association. So this is a landmark story. And it comes out of Clayton Christensen and a guy named Bob Mesta of the Rewired Group. But it goes like this. McDonald's wanted to increase the sales of their milkshakes, okay? So they did what many people do. You have focus groups and you pull people together and survey them and say, how can we make this milkshake better so you would buy more of them or more frequently, right? And McDonald's had their personas. They had all this demographic profiles of the exact milkshake customer. So every time they made these changes they got on feedback, they would change the milkshake and it had very little to no impact on their sales, okay? So they said, let's try something different. And what they did was they stood outside of McDonald's and they watched people come in and out of the location. And they discovered something pretty fascinating. They discovered that more than half of the milkshakes were purchased before 8:30 in the morning. And every time someone got one, almost all of them were alone and they got into a car and drove off. So they got thinking, geez, this is curious. Let's do some interviewing and find out what's happening. So they began to approach some of these customers and say, hey, you know, I'm kind of confused. I see you buying a milkshake at 8:30 in the morning. You're alone. Can you help me to understand what is the job you were trying to get done by hiring that milkshake? And as you're probably thinking, people said, what does that even mean? Job I'm trying to get done. I don't know what you're talking about. So they said, let me ask it a different way. They asked these customers, the last time you had this same need or job that you needed to get done, the struggle that you had, what else did you hire when you didn't hire a milkshake? And some people said, you know, one day I hired a banana, but the banana was gone in 2 minutes. And then I had this peel I had to get rid of while I was driving and it makes a mess. And then I'm hungry by the time I get to work. Someone said, you know, I buy one time I bought a donut, but the powder gets all over my suit and then I'm starting to gain weight. That's not a good thing. I tried a bagel, but it's kind of dry and it's hard to spread the cream cheese on it. But when I buy this milkshake, you know, I've got a long, boring ride to work. But when I have this milkshake, it sits right here in this cup holder and I can hold it the whole time. And by the time I get to work, I just finished it and my stomach's full, right? So that job there, right? The job is not just to have breakfast, right? The job is keep me occupied on my ride to work, right? And fill me up so I'm not hungry at 10 a.m. And if you think about it, that milkshake does the job than any of the competitors. So McDonald's isn't just competing with places that offer smoothies and milkshakes, right? They're competing with things that can keep you busy on your commute to work when we used to ride to work. So if McDonald's wanted to improve the milkshake, they shouldn't just be trying to figure out how to make this thing tastier by adding chocolate chunks or nuts into it, right? They should be thinking, how do I improve it on dimensions in entertaining this person on the drive to work? How might I do that? I don't know what I could wing it off the top of my head. Maybe it's an interesting cup that feels, a nice way to hold. Maybe it makes it quicker for them to go through the drive-through and get this thing on the way to work. But I love this story because sometimes you have board members or staff, right, that are debating which idea we should launch next, which improvement to make our benefits better. And jobs theory is super helpful on getting everyone on the same page around which innovations and improvements we should do next, right? Sometimes we just add on bells and whistles to our benefits and offerings in hopes that people will like them. But now you can say, oh, we've got 6 ideas that we're all talking about. Let's go back to the 3 jobs we identified and see if any of our ideas actually link to those jobs. So that's the famous milkshake story. And Tracy, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah. And just to add on to this, so I think we've all seen this quote, right? If I'd asked, it's from Henry Ford. If I asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses to response to his invention of the automobile. And the point of this is, if you really want to create breakthrough innovation, if you really want to connect with your customer, what and how you ask them matters. Okay, so because if you simply ask customers what they want from their membership, right, they're going to respond just like the buggy riders did in Ford's day with ambiguous, subjective commentary. And it's unhelpful, right? Make it easier, make it better, make it more simple for me. Things you hear all the time from your members, okay? That's why we want to dig deeper. I think that if Henry Ford used jobs to be done, he would have asked, what is the struggle involved in using a horse to get from point A to point B? So if he answered that question, which he did, that's what made it so that he did not come up with a faster horse. So let's use a modern example. Let's use Uber, because who doesn't use Uber in a presentation like this, right? Uber is not about, like the horse, it's not about getting you from point A to point B, okay? There was a struggle involved. Do y'all remember calling taxis? And do you remember what the struggle was there? The big struggle was, well, first of all, I always hated calling taxis because I didn't like the dispatchers. I always felt like they were really mean, which has nothing to do with what I want to say next, but that was a struggle for me, actually getting on the phone with somebody. The other struggle is, when is my taxi going to get here, right? It was a little bit of an unknown, and they would give you a window. Or is the driver going to take my credit card? Because I don't have cash. I only use credit cards or a card. So the job isn't, can an Uber get me from point A to point B, just like the horse, right? The job is knowing when my car is coming and making a payment easy. That's why I'm hiring Uber. So associations were started to get a lot of jobs done, right? There are many jobs that your members want you to fulfill. And, becoming a member is not a job. Meaningfully connecting with people who are in my profession and have the same challenges as I do at work, that could be a job. But we'd want to dig a little bit further, right? What is meaningfully connected? And what are the alternatives? Mike gave a really good example. There's a lot of alternatives to the milkshake that McDonald's discovered once they used this framework. So back to Mike's point, a job is simply a story of how a customer, is making progress in a certain situation. And what you want to do as an association is you want to provide experiences that enable your customers to make progress in any given situation when it comes to their experience with you. Jobs to be done explains causation, right? What caused somebody to hire your association? What caused somebody to hire your conference? What caused somebody to read your publication? And once you know that root cause, you know, that's where the prioritization becomes easier, because you're solving for the right problem. The other thing you want to remember is, for every job, it can include multiple components: a functional component, a social component, and an emotional dimension, right? So a job is a little bit like a story. Let's pretend you offer certifications, okay? And if I'm a member looking for a certification, one of the reasons I would hire a certification is to move up in my career, right? That's a functional job. Help me make progress in my career. You could be hiring a certification because you like the idea of being part of the study group, right? You know you're going to walk away not just with a certification, but with a built-in group of professional friends that you've gone through something pretty intense with. Or you could be hiring the job to provide you with social status. It's going to elevate you socially. So knowing those three parts of the job, of the certification, you're going to provide experiences around that certification offering that helps your customers make progress fulfilling those social, functional, and emotional needs. Am I making sense here, Mike?
Well done.
Okay, good.
By the way, if you have questions, or I know we're dumping a lot on you and it's going to continue to build. So if we say something that went too fast, you want us to clarify, just drop in the chat and we'll try to pay attention and we can go back or speak to it.
Yeah, and this may help. We're going to go into a real world example. We recently used this framework within a larger outcome-driven innovation process as the starting point for ASAE and their digital transformation efforts. So when ASAE came to us, they had a couple of questions they'd been working on. The first question is, A, how do we better understand our members and what they need? And B, how do we keep those needs front and center in everything we do? It's one thing to know your member needs, you know, it's like the personas. You know who your members are, you know what they need, but how do you keep that in front of you at all times in your day-to-day work, when you're selecting technical systems, when you're creating processes? How do you meet those needs in that way? So for ASAE, we started by interviewing members using this job to be done framework. And Mike is going to take you through the components of a jobs to be done interview, because anybody can do this.
Great. I want to pull up my document camera if I can first. Can I do that? And I'll come back to this slide.
Oh yeah, that's a great idea.
I think just the sequence works better. We're going to look at next, what are the forces behind people's decisions? What are those pressures or forces that cause people to make a decision to hire you or to fire you? Right. So let me got a little drawing here I'm going to show you with my document camera, and I think that should sort of cover it. Can you see that? Right. So these are the forces that drive hiring decisions. And I'm going to put in here in the middle. Here's a person. Right, and I'm not an artist, but I think you get it. And this person is trying to think, you know, right? They're trying to make a decision. And let's use a real example, okay? This individual is trying to think about, they're thinking about getting a certification. They want to get their CAE, right? Their Certified Association Executive credential. You could apply this to any credential, but let's use the CAE because so many of us are familiar with that, okay? So they're thinking about it. Here's what's happening as they're thinking about it. I think this is pretty fascinating. There's some forces that are pushing them to go do it. I'm going to call those up here. Forces that are pushing them forward to go do it, right? For example, over here you have the current way, which is no CAE. I don't have a certification. Over here is a new solution, should I get the CAE? So you got forces pushing you. For example, I'm at work, this is a true story, and someone said, you know what? Everybody else has their CAE. So it feels like a bit of a peer pressure. I should probably get one too, okay? But that alone probably is not going to be why you're going to decide to go get it, okay? You've got some other forces too. You got the push over there, and over here you have a pull, right? And here's some examples of through an interview. As we asked someone, we said, so, what are some of those things that were going on in your mind that caused you to say yes or no to this? Walk us through that in detail. Someone said, one of the pulls is my boss encouraged me, right? She said it'd be a great idea. It would help me in my career. Also, I said, you know what? I'm going to gain some knowledge that can help me. It won't help me in my job right now, but in the future, it probably will. And, on top of that, my organization is going to pay for it. I talked to the board and they're going to pay for it. So I got a lot of forces going on here. Now, it looks like, and as I said, stop in the chat if I'm going too fast here, I can clarify. But at this point, it sounds like you should do it. However, there's some forces going against all of this. That's not alone. That's not it. We have some forces going against it. Whoops. Fix my camera here. Okay. Let's look at some of those forces against it. Over here, hopefully you can see that. We have habit over here. You can use this for any kind of decision that you make to purchase a car, to redo your kitchen, anything at all, right? For example, one habit is, geez, will I have enough time to study? That's going against me going to this new solution and getting the CAE. Some other things are, there's some anxiety. This is something that we don't think about. In any kind of purchasing decision or making a choice to go to a conference, buy a solution, there's some anxiety going on. Like, geez, I feel kind of obligated to get it. Should I go get it if it's just about peer pressure? Do I really see the value? And how about this one? Will I pass the exam? And what happens if I don't, right? So the idea here is that for you to move to the new solution and make the decision to go study and sit for the exam and put all that effort in, the pushes and pulls up above going towards the new solution have got to be stronger than these forces going against you down below going back to the current way. Make sense? These pushes and pulls, right, up top have to be stronger than all these things going against you down below for you to say, I'm going to go to that new solution and that's what I'm going to do. Questions about this? Right? So people have these struggles and they're trying to make they're trying to make some sort of progress around this. Let me bring this back and let me know if I can expand here. Let me just stop my show and bring the slides back. There you go. Got the slides there, Tracy? Awesome. Yeah. So, I'll share an example for you. I was really unhappy. We're going to talk about this slide in a minute. I was really unhappy with my accountant for years. Talk about push and pull, right? He was slow to respond. He made mistakes. It was really the responsiveness. But so there was a force pushing me to say, go find a new accountant and bookkeeper. However, what's the habit and anxiety behind it? Will I like this new move? And how am I going to get all my paperwork and files over to this new accountant to take over? That's a lot of anxiety. So just pushing me, telling me how great the accountant is not going to address it. All right. So let's talk about this. Let's talk about this this next slide here. Yeah. So this is fascinating to me. So as I said, the only way you're going to get at this level of detail is through an interview. You can't get this data through a survey. But what this shows us is that this is the timeline that people tend to follow a standard pattern when making a decision. You can't force someone to join your association or to buy your product or new solution, right? You can try to communicate all you want, but people work on their own time, right? It's up to them. And if you understand that they tend to follow this pattern, it can help you, right? So what we do is when we interview people, we say, tell me about the story about how you came to choose to get your CAE. Walk me through in great detail, like we're filming a documentary. Tell me everything that happened. What was the first thought that ever came in your mind the first time you said, maybe I should get my CAE, right? So look at that. That's passive looking. It says the first thought, and you'll see in green there, I just started a new job and I'm wondering if a CAA is going to be helpful, right? And my boss mentioned it to me, right? So you kind of passively think about it, right? And then often some event happens, some milestone, where you realize at lunch when you're out, everybody at the table around you also has their CAE, and you're wondering, or whatever the certification is, and you feel kind of left out of the club. So then you say, maybe I should actively consider this and look for a solution or actually do it. So then finally look at event 2. One person told us, my employment contract is coming up for renewal. I'm going to have to talk about this and negotiate it with the board. Let me see if the board will pay for it. And the board says, sure, we're going to give you a 2-year employment contract and we'll pay for it. So then you make a decision to go ahead and do it, right? But there's all these forces in there, right? All the other things I shared earlier about all those anxieties. And it turns out this individual, she decided that she had to do it a year in advance because she had a lot of anxiety at work and other issues pushing her that she had to take care of first, and she had to fit it in her schedule. Questions or comments about this, about how this works and the value of seeing it this day? So we ask questions like, as I said, what was the first time you thought about joining? What other things did you research, right? Did you explore any other kind of certifications besides getting your CAE? Was there something else, right? Did you do some research? Did you read things, right? You could ask, why did you choose to renew or not renew it, your membership? You can apply this to a whole bunch of different areas, right? So that's the key of really how it works. But it's really open-ended questions in a deep dive. Often we'd say, wait a minute, I don't understand. You just told me X, Y, and Z, but you just chose to purchase this thing. You fill in the details for me. And suddenly these nuances come in and you say, aha, that makes sense. Now I know what actually caused this. So maybe in the way I improve my products or services or benefits, I can speak to that more directly. Tracy, you want to talk? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say this interview process is the heart of jobs to be done, right? And I think, as an organization, I know my company, we've done all types of interviewing, right? All types of, trying to get deeper into what members want. And I can say that this interview process with jobs to be done, we got information, and we can get information on members that we would never have gotten even with a traditional interview style, right? This really helps you. It's interesting because it's very granular, like Mike said, right? You're taking one piece of a member decision and you're really dissecting it. And for that reason, you get a lot of good information back. For ASAE, was there anything else on that last slide, Mike, you wanted to touch on?
Go back, just 1 second. Hillary asked a question. Are the steps on the left and the ones on the right the same for every job? I think, Hillary, you're talking about that previous slide that we just had up.
I'm working on it. There you go.
Bring it back. I think this is what you're asking. I think this is the one, not my drawing. Hillary, correct me if I'm wrong. But my argument is essentially yes. If you think about most decisions that you make, think about something you recently bought or purchased. If you think about it, you had a first thought, and then you sort of passively explored it. And typically there's 2 events that seems to take place, not entirely, but generally. And often the last one is really time oriented. Event 2 is time oriented. Like, I'm thinking about redoing my kitchen, and then suddenly COVID comes up and you're like, oh my, if I'm going to redo my kitchen or renovate my bathroom, I better do it now while it's nice outside, because I'm going to have people working in my house. I want to have the window open. So it's often something that's time triggered that moves it. So essentially, yes.
Yeah. Any other questions there?
That was the only one I see there.
Okay. So just a really quick, when we did the jobs to be done interviews for ASAE, here's what we found in the end, right? So the initial results showed that ASAE members expect the organization to fill 2 emotional jobs. The first job is help association professionals find purpose in their profession. Being an association professional is special. You're giving to the world in a greater way. Help me understand that purpose. The other emotional job was give association professionals a sense of belonging. Okay, we're joining to get a sense of belonging within our professional community or in life. ASAE members also expected ASAE to fulfill several functional jobs, okay? Grow expertise as an association professional, make progress in my career, address a work challenge in the moment, and teach them how to better run and grow their organization. So if you look at these jobs, I think some of you may be thinking, maybe not, you tell me, you know, oh, we did a member survey and this looks really similar, right? Because most member surveys that I've seen touch on some of these in one way or another. But it's different, and here's where it's different. So any member survey I've seen will talk about members want to join your association for networking. Okay, and so what you're doing is you're trying to fulfill the need for networking, and you're looking into online communities and you're trying to make your events as good as possible, and it's all around networking. Well, what we found, at least in this set of interviews, is that people weren't looking to network. Even the extroverts we talked to, they were like, oh, those big events with the alcohol, it's such a pain, you know. They were looking to find a sense of belonging. So if you know that you're solving for belonging rather than networking, that changes the game, right? If you're solving for belonging and you're thinking about any one part of your offering, right? If you're looking at belonging through the lens of belonging when you think of your conferences, and you think of what happens if I am a first-time conference attendee and I show up and I'm alone and I'm a little bit scared, you're gonna approach solving the challenge of belonging a lot differently than solving the challenge of networking. So this is where this becomes much more powerful than what a persona can give you, or what what a survey can give you. And Hillary says, so you're saying we often falsely embed the solution in the very questions and explorations. Yes, yeah, that's exactly what we're saying.
Can I add to this? It makes me think that in these surveys that we often send to members after a conference or about the benefits, we ask someone why they joined. You might send them a survey as soon as they joined and say, why did you join? Here are the reasons. Often they're going to tell you all about your benefits, but they might not actually have even thought about all those benefits. It could have been something else. You want to find out what was their struggle, what was their thinking, what was their challenge when they actually chose to join. Much deeper. It's not going to show up there.
Yeah.
Purpose is just it's a great example. You know, we did, I think, 8 interviews, maybe 9 interviews or so, Tracy, and suddenly we said, look at these patterns. I tell you, you go interview 8-ish members and say that recently joined, right, or recently went to a conference, and dig deep, and it's amazing. You'll see these patterns come up. You'll identify 2, 4, 5, 6 jobs.
I think we both were shocked, right? I know I was like, how can these patterns be so clear so soon, yeah. Right? But they were. It was good.
And they're not personas.
And they're not personas.
Yeah.
Good segue. All right, let's talk, because we labeled this webinar bashing personas. I just want to say I love personas. There is a place and a time for them, but I'm sure we've used personas, and if you haven't used them, a persona is a fictional character or portrait of the type of customer or user of your service or product. Okay, and we use them, and I'm sure you use them for 2 main reasons. You use them to build empathy among your team, right? Here's what our member looks like, right? And here's who they are, so that your team can kind of internalize who your member is. They're also used as devices to aid in making your target audiences more memorable for the rest of your team. The challenge is that personas end up in a drawer, right? Personas are really exciting, and they do create solve those 2 problems in the beginning, but too many times we don't use them in our organizations the way that we could. When we do, they're very impactful. What personas don't do, what surveys don't do, they don't get at the circumstances that and the causes as effectively. Okay, so persona is not going to tell you. Persona is going to tell you, here's a 31-year-old single man who lives in an urban area who works for a nonprofit, right? This is the persona of our member. But what a persona is not going to tell you is, why does he eat cornflakes for breakfast? You know, why does he have a membership at a health club? And why did he purchase 2 t-shirts and a shovel at Target? For some reason, I have a murder mystery in my mind right now, Mike. I've never thought about that before. So the circumstances he is in at the time of his life matter, right? And jobs to be done helps get us to the very bottom causes, root causes of why he's making the choices that he's making. Anything to add to that?
No, well done. It also doesn't say why that 31-year-old man decided to join the association that day. What was going on? When did that person first initially think about it? What were some of those events that took place? You don't have that at all.
Yeah. So we have in this webinar, hopefully given you a clear idea, just a taste of what the jobs to be done framework is. We found it to be very impactful. There's a second part to this though, okay? And it is, what is a member, well, that's a little premature. How does a member measure value when trying to accomplish those jobs? Okay, so if you know a job is help me make progress in my career, that's one thing. But to understand, okay, how does somebody measure value? What does progress mean to that person when they're at my conference or when they're using my professional development offerings? And once we can get those outcomes, we really know what outcome a member expects. That's where the rubber meets the road, and you can take this into your day-to-day work. So our next webinar, we're going to go through exactly how to do this, exactly how to apply this to your day-to-day work with your members. And we really hope that you join us. Okay, we're going to open this up for questions. I really wish, yeah, we're going to open this up for questions. Does anybody have any questions or thoughts before we close this out?
I want to acknowledge Danielle's comment in there. Belonging is so vastly different from networking. Love it.
Yeah, feels different. Are you all making your lunches right now?
Hillary asked a question. How are these different from regular user interviews?
Yeah, I can answer that question. For us, Hillary, this would be a really good conversation over coffee, by the way, because I would love to hear how you think about this. Because for us, the user interview, I've always felt like we get a lot of information, but we don't dig really deeply into a very specific reason. The framework of this line of questioning has really forced us to probe in a much deeper way than we generally do. And because it's so focused on one aspect of membership, I feel like we're getting a richer set of outcomes within the interview process. I would love to get a group of people together, round table, and just discuss this, because I think it's fascinating.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, are those user interviews about using a certain tool or technology, what it is about? Because if we're asking, we don't just want to ask about a particular product or service and how you liked it. We want to know, why did you use that thing in the first place? What was the progress or challenge you were trying to address? Yeah.
Can I answer Val's question? Which is, for those of us with no budget and even less time, is there a way to ask these questions, at least in some way, through a survey? No, but here's what I would do, Val. This is the beautiful part of this, is that we're going to send you the book, not the book, we're going to send you a link to the book. We're going to send you some articles. this is super easy to learn, this questioning process. Get 2 or 3 of your staff to go out and do a few interviews each. And you will get the same results we did. And it'll be less costly than a survey and less time consuming, and maybe equally time consuming, but it's that easy. This is why we love it. Mike, would you agree with me?
Yeah, totally. That's great. Yeah, I mean, it's if you don't have much of a budget, it's going to take you a little bit of time, but we're talking about 45 minutes to do an interview, and you're going to get better as you do them. I like to have that forces diagram, and I'll take notes during the interview and ask if I can record it. Ask them, would you mind if I record our conversation? Because when a few different people hear the interview answers, they're going to hear different things than you heard. So you want to go back and play it, but it doesn't cost much to do it. Yeah. A few other questions in here. Bo White had one. Hi, Bo. What are your thoughts on how this changes during the pandemic? Members will still have jobs to be done, but no money and resources. Yeah. Go ahead, Tracy.
I feel, it's interesting. We started our ASAE project in January, February, and then the pandemic hit, and we were like, oh crap, right? Like, how is this going to impact this? And what was interesting is those jobs to be done. What surprised me is we had already done the interviews, and the jobs to be done that we found, this is what's beautiful about it. They don't, because they're so, what's the word? They're static. Those needs, those customer jobs don't change. Yet the whole world changed, and we are able to use those jobs to be done to address the pandemic issues, right? I think they're more impactful now, even though we asked the questions before the pandemic.
People still want a sense of purpose, perhaps that's the job, but how are you going to give it to them during the pandemic? You can't do it how you did it before.
And belonging, you have no conferences, right? So how are you going to create a sense of belonging online? That's, and there's a lot of little ways, little things you can do that with very little money and resources. That's a whole other webinar.
Hillary had a question there. Is the book you're sending us the link for the Jobs to be Done playbook by Jim Kalbach? I have not read that book, but I've seen it referred to somewhere, I think on Medium. I've seen a link to it.
There's a couple, Hillary, there's going to be like 2 or 3 different links that we're going to send you. One is to Clayton Christensen's original work, his Jobs to be Done work book, and another is an article from Anthony Ulrich. Heard you say his name. Michelle has a really good question here. Before the interviews, do you give respondents a heads up so they can think on it? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. You want them, this is going to be a little bit hard and they're going to have to think on it. Mike, what do you like?
Yeah, I'd say I schedule a time. Do you have a minute to? We see you went to the conference, or we see you engaged on our website in some way. I'd love to find a time to talk for 30 minutes about your experience with it. And they think you're going to ask just about the experience, but you're going to say, walk me through when you first thought you might need to go to the website or go to the conference or register. So I don't think you want to set them up.
No, the responses you get are so much more, they're real, right?
Yeah.
They really are real when you do it that way.
And do say, help me to understand, what do you mean by you liked it? Or it met your needs? What do you mean by it met your needs? I don't understand. Say more about that. And as they start going and going, 20 minutes in is the aha moment comes out. Any other questions or comments? I think we hit them all.
I think we're good. I think everyone's, these are our email addresses. Email us, get a hold of us if you have any other questions. We'd love to talk to you. We obviously love talking about this. And we will send a follow-up email with the recording and with some extra resources for you.
Yeah, thank you all. This has been fun. I think there's just so much potential for this to be used in the association space, other spaces too. And it always surprises me when I say, have you heard of Jobs to be Done? And I get kind of a blank stare. So I'm thrilled, and thank you all for taking the time out of your busy days to join us. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.